Good evening. Welcome to Left, Right and Centre. I'm Vishnu Shom. On the programme tonight, India and China continue the process of de-escalation in Eastern Ladakh, a move that had taken the two nuclear-armed neighbours from the verge of an out-and-out conflict to a situation where there may actually be peace. Well, that's what we hope. Now, on this programme, we'll be joined by some of India's finest diplomats, military leaders and analysts, former Foreign Secretary Shyam Saran, Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, Brahma Chelani, among others, as we ask the de-escalation, is this a win-win for India? But what we can now share with you are some of the latest high-resolution satellite images of the north bank of the Pangong Lake, where a lot of this has happened. So what we'll do is to show you the older images of when the Chinese were illegally on Indian territory and the pictures now of them pulling back. First, this is the area that we are talking about, the north bank of the Pangong Lake. The line you see is called the Ridge Line, Finger 4. As part of the agreement, Indian forces have shifted west of Finger 4 to the Indian post, the location of which you see. Now, the area from Finger 4 to Finger 8, which lies further to the east, is now no man's land, no patrolling by either side. It is the territory here that the Chinese occupied and from where they are now moving back. So, what are the changes that we are now seeing? First, let's look at the situation at Finger 5 on the 30th of January. Those are Chinese structures on the left-hand side of your screen on territory that is Indian territory. But on the 16th of February, 2 days back, the area is empty of these structures. They're gone. So let's put the two pictures together. As you can see, when we compare the images, the old image to the left and the Chinese having moved away on the right. Let's move to the Finger 6 area of Pangong, and these are several Chinese huts on the 30th of January, less than a month back. 2 days ago, these are gone from the same location. So again, let's compare the images and you can see the differences. Here's another close-up of Finger 6, a slightly different location. Again, Chinese structures visible on the 30th of January, but gone 2 days ago on the 16th of February. Again, here is the comparison of the same location, and significantly, as you see, the Chinese have even leveled out that particular area. They are supposed to be doing that as part of the agreement. Finally, this is the area further to the west between Finger 7 and Finger 8. As you can see, several Chinese tents and other structures, small ones you can see in pink on the right-hand side of the screen. 2 days back, same area, these were in fact removed. So let's bring you a comparison of the two areas. On the left-hand side, you can see those structures. On the right-hand side, they have in fact been vacated. Now, the process of de-escalation on the north and the south bank of Pangong Lake is by no means complete. That will happen by the 24th of this month, after which both sides will look at the other areas and figure out a time-bound solution. But let me go across to General Kulkarni first. General, glass half empty or glass full at this stage?
Vishnu, we must see it as something that happened good for both the countries. There was so much of tension. There's so much that had happened in the last about 10 months, and what China had done and where India stood firmly, ensuring that the status quo ante April 2020 is restored. In that context, I would say it's a win-win situation. I hear a lot of it being people wanting to comment on issues, but let's be honest as what it is and what I've done and what I've seen. Our perception of the LAC runs along Finger 8. Again, we were never at Finger 4. We were always at Dancing Tapa, and we patrolled from Dancing Tapa to Finger 8. It's only later, sometime around May 2020, when the Chinese patrolled till Finger 4, we patrolled till Finger 8. Now they have gone east of Finger 8. That indicates clearly that the Chinese have accepted our perception of the LAC, which runs along Finger 8. And to say anything other than what it is, I think it would be grossly incorrect. I would put it that way.
General Kulkarni, just for the benefit of our viewers, don't the Chinese actually have a post at Finger 8 with a listening post, a radar, and this is the area where they have a jetty as well? Because if that's the case, then if they were at the moment, the pictures indicate they've not moved from that area. There's still some time left. So I'm trying to understand where this is. Is that west of Finger 8 or east of Finger 8 rather? Or,
What happens is, at Finger 8, I would call it a listening post, but a small hutment existed where an old couple sometime would be staying there. And all along, from Finger 8 to Finger 4, the Chinese could come in vehicles in petrol and go back. We had to walk from Finger 4 till Finger 8 because our camp was Tan Sing Tapa, which is in line with Finger 3. So from Finger 3, we walk up to Finger 4 on the track and then go along to Finger 8. But the Chinese could come and patrol up to Finger 4 in vehicles. So this particular old couple or whatever we saw, you call it by any name, listening post or anything like that, it doesn't really it is nothing. The camp is at either Sirijap 2, 1 or the Konark Fort. That's where they all are settled. They are never over here. Yes, now what they've done is all the jetties, helipads, constructions, bunkers, pillboxes, observation posts, communication lines, communication trenches, all of them have been demolished by the Chinese. They brought back the landform as it existed in April 2020. And what your satellite pictures that you're showing is indicative that the Chinese have actually pulled back from Finger 4, 5, 6, 7, and they've gone east of Finger 8.
Einar Tangen, why did... it's great firstly to have you on the show, political analyst and economic affairs commentator. Thanks very much for once again being on this program. Just trying to understand what the Chinese believe they achieved by coming into Indian territory. Was it an attempt at a territorial grab, or was it an attempt to teach India some sort of a lesson? Why did China do this in the first place?
Well, from Beijing's perspective, they were looking at the situation in Jammu and Kashmir, statements on the floor of the Lok Sabha, where a senior minister said that it's not best until Sakhalin, Kashmir was back in the change of the maps. Then that, in conjunction with the physical improvements, the infrastructure that was happening there, China wanted to send a very strong message. They had a resolve. They would not be pushed out. So what you have here is two neighbors who had a trust deficit. And at this point, it seems that they are trying to move towards building trust back up. So it's clearly understood that neither side wants to invade the other side. From Chinese perspective, they see this as disputed areas, not Indian areas. And they're simply, as I said, trying to send a message that China will not be pushed around. Obviously, India is trying to send the same message.
Okay. Dr. Chilani, your sense of what has happened now? I know Debsang is still a long ways away, Hot Springs, Gogra, perhaps even Demchok. But as we've been talking for the last several months, there is a huge Chinese military and infrastructure build-up beyond these areas. That's going nowhere. So should we be cautious in how we look at these developments while welcoming it?
We need to be cautious because this narrowly limited deal confined to one sector, that itself represents a big gamble on India's part. For example, India is withdrawing from the Kailash Heights, and the withdrawal from the Kailash Heights comes with a major risk. Furthermore, the buffer zone that has been created on the northern side of the Pangong Lake includes not only the disputed territory between Fingers 4 and 8, but also undisputed Indian territory that China never claimed. And that's the area between Fingers 4 and the Indian base, which is located between Fingers 2 and 3. So India henceforth will be able to patrol only to the west of its base. So this undisputed Indian territory has also become part of the buffer zone. And there's also the bigger picture that we should not forget. China hasn't turned a new leaf, nor has it rolled back the core gains of its aggression. China, as we know, is pursuing a strategy of attrition, friction, and containment against India. India can be sure that China, with its contempt for bilateral agreements and international norms, will stir up disputes elsewhere along the Himalayan frontier. And, Vishnu, you have been reporting about these border villages that are coming up.
Absolutely. The pictures are clear. They're sharp. 4+
and
kilometers
those
inside
villages,
Indian territory, constructed in the last 1 year. Right.
Yes, and those border villages are part and parcel of the frenzied Chinese military infrastructure build-up all along the Himalayan frontier. And that build-up is intended to pin India down under sustained pressure. China will seek to redefine the LAC in all sectors with the aim of imposing buffer zones on its terms on India. It has already succeeded in turning areas that were under India's patrolling jurisdiction into buffer zones in 2 sectors. First Galwan Valley and now the Pangong region.
Okay. General Kulkarni, last word to you on this. Do you believe that the situation on the ground will never be the same, that whatever it is, peace is welcome, we will be strongly deployed on the ground to ensure that something like this doesn't catch us off guard?
Shom, definitely. We have to be alert. China can't be trusted for whatever it has been doing and what it can do. And even if it has pulled back or disengaged, it's just gone, say, about 100, 150 kilometers behind, and it can mobilize because it has good infrastructure. However, having said that, I must now first clarify a certain thing. This is an interim agreement between the 2 countries that between finger 4 and finger 8, nobody will patrol and no military activities will be conducted. To say that we have ceded the territory or that it has become a buffer zone, it would be incorrect. Otherwise, why would China go east of finger 8? They could have well gone east of finger 7, 6, 5, wherever they wanted to. The very fact they've gone, and to say that we have given up our rights of patrolling of our area, it isn't so. Our perception was finger 8. We would continue to patrol finger 8 once this entire thing is stabilized. That's the most important thing. It is as a first step. The entire thing is to facilitate peace and tranquility along the LAC and hopefully facilitates border resolution, which should be the final thing.
All right.
But to say we have ceded anything, it would be incorrect. Now, when we say of status quo ante April 2020, north and south of Pangong, so if it is in phase 1, we have nothing else to say that, well, we have ceded away certain strategic heights. Well, their last range was the turning point. Without fail, it was the turning point. But we don't really give in anything like that. It's a step 1 in the entire thing. Once north and south of Pangong, so central.
Right. So, General, I take your point completely, and let's just hope that this really works out in the way that we all hope. Nobody wants a conflict or a clash between India and China. I'd like to thank you all very much for being with us. Joining us now, the former Foreign Secretary, Shyam Saran. Thank you very much, Mr. Saran, for being with us.
My pleasure.
At this stage, sir, are you any clearer to perhaps having an idea on why China did what it did? Was it a territorial land grab, or was it an attempt to try and teach India some sort of a lesson?
Very difficult to gauge what may have been the reason for China to engage this kind of aggressive behavior. But I do feel that perhaps they may not have expected the kind of reaction that came their way as a result of their incursion in Eastern Ladakh, not merely on the military side with very heavy deployments from India, but also the economic actions taken by the Indian side. I think this was not in China's playbook in a sense. The 2 armed forces have been eyeball to eyeball with possibility of, accident or misperception, very difficult terrain, very inclement weather affecting both sides. So from that point of view, I think for both sides, this is in fact a positive development.
Sir, a few commentators and others have said that in fact the agreement which has been arrived at may not necessarily be in India's interest, because we've had to give up our positions on the heights of the south bank, for example, of the Pangong link along the Kailash range. Is that your perception as well, or do you believe that even the military solution on the ground is win-win for India?
The impression one has is that this is only the first phase of a fairly elaborate and structured process of disengagement between the two sides, because it is supposed to cover other areas of confrontation between the two sides. So really it is difficult to come to a sort of well-considered conclusion until we get to the end of the process. This is just the initial phase. So I think we should wait and see how this really gets rolled out. But you are right in saying that with regard to the heights on the south Pangong, heights, the Kailash heights, India has, in a sense, given up its earlier position that if there has to be a disengagement, it must take place across the entire line of actual control. And not phase by phase. If you remember, the Chinese were insisting that we should first vacate the Kailash heights before we get on to disengagement in other areas. To that extent, there is a certain concession which has been made by the Indian side. But whether this was a good decision or not such a good decision would really be possible for us to make that judgment only once the entire process of disengagement really does take place as it has been planned. But to the extent, again, I would say, to the extent that a situation of eyeball to eyeball confrontation is now being, in a sense, wound down, that by itself is a positive step.
Yeah. Ambassador Saran, a lot of our viewers will not know that you have actually been to many of the patrol points, or some of the patrol points in Eastern Ladakh. You've actually trekked there yourself as part of being part of the process which tried to understand or get an idea of the line of actual control and our patrol points. Do you believe that ultimately our goal needs to be to restore our right to patrol to certain areas, or it needs to be to restore our interpretation of the line of actual control? And I'm not talking about overall Aksai Chin, that's the larger goal, but the immediate line of actual control.
I think it is important for your viewers to understand what the landscape is like, because I think perhaps people do not have a very clear idea of what we mean when we say the LSC or what we mean when we say patrolling points. Let me, if you give me a minute, I'll just explain that, one is the line of actual control as we understand that. So the coordinates of that line are fairly well known on our side. But because this is very difficult terrain, it is not possible for us to deploy troops all along the LSC. So as a result, there are various patrolling points you must have seen, 14, 15, 16, 17, which are located either at the LSC or very close to the LSC, which we patrol regularly. But in reaching those patrol points, you have to follow a certain patrolling route. And those patrolling routes are determined by, say, for example, along river valleys or along ridges or other maybe landmarks. So if you are following those lines, the patrolling lines, then obviously there is a gap between the line of actual control and the patrolling routes that we have. Now, it is that gap where, in fact, we don't go very frequently, neither do the Chinese come frequently, where as a result of very good improvement in border infrastructure on our side, on their side, the encounters between patrols are more frequent. The areas which we were not going to before, we are going to more frequently. And therefore, in this situation, it is not very surprising that there are these kind of points of friction. But I think it is very important to understand that both sides do have agreements of peace and tranquility, precisely in order to meet situations which arise as a result of these encounters between patrols. so that we should not be carrying arms, we should not get into a kind of a violent clash, that we should make our point that this is our territory and then head back, thereby avoiding a confrontation. What has happened in the recent past is that China has very deliberately, violated these long-standing agreements, and that is something which is new. And the number of troops which have been involved from their side, the large deployments that they have made, this also is new. So there is no doubt that there has been a deliberate effort on the part of China to raise the or up the ante as far as the border situation is concerned. Was this a response to improved infrastructure on our side? Was this a sense that, perhaps we can put a little pressure on the Indian side so that, what they see as India perhaps moving closer to the United States and to the Quad, maybe that can be retarded. It is difficult to speculate on this, but the fact is that this is a new situation.
Ambassador, final question to you. What is the new normal then between India and China? Will there be a back to what it was economically and otherwise? We've taken a huge dent in terms of our diplomatic perception of China. I think that's absolutely clear. So from a strictly diplomatic standpoint, as an observer of China, after having gone through this episode, where do we start, or do we start trying to fix this from a diplomatic standpoint at a larger level?
There is no going back to where we were before the events since April 2020. That much is clear. We cannot just wind back to where we were before that, because where we were was the result of a few decades of very careful nurturing of the relationship between the two sides, a tradition of the regular summits between the leaders, the fact that even on the margins of, regional meetings, multilateral meetings, they never lost an opportunity to engage with one another. Those kind of meetings also had a very good impact in terms of keeping the relationship on an even keel. And that seemed to be the case till the Mamallapuram informal summit between the two leaders. But, that has changed. So to think that we can just go back to where we were, I do not think that is to happen. You need to find some kind of a new framework for the relationship, which can only come through, patient engagement between the two sides. And far as the economic and commercial relationship is concerned, yes, I get a feeling from some indications that some resumption of economic and commercial relations is likely to happen, because I see that the Great Wall, car company of China, which has acquired the GM plant in India, it was stalled, that particular deal. Perhaps it may be going through, maybe some other deals may be going through. But even there, I would say that the kind of, domination which China had of the high-tech startup area in India, I do not think that we can go back to that. So bottom line, things have changed, and things have changed very in a very significant way, and it will be through very, very patient engagement over the next few years that we can find perhaps a new equilibrium in the relationship.
A final question to you, as somebody who has invested so many decades of your life in Indian diplomacy, to in many ways trying to fix the China situation. When this all turned out to be the way it was till quite recently, were you personally devastated at this relationship you had invested, other officers in the Foreign Service had invested so greatly, just being destroyed? And let's face it, it was destroyed from what it had become.
Well, obviously, I mean, as diplomats, we try to, do our best to nurture a relationship, and particularly the India-China relationship is a very critical relationship. So you need to invest in it. But I don't think that we are devastated as a result of what has happened, because, we have been conscious of the fact that even though relations between the two countries had improved over the last several years, the relationship in essence is an adversarial relationship. It is a competitive relationship. there have been various points of friction even in the past, even with respect to the border. But what was different? The difference was that both sides seemed to have an interest in keeping, as I said, the relationship on an even keel. And, you know, the investment, not just of diplomats, but the investment made by the leaders of the two countries, including Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi. You know, if you look at just the informal summits, the amount of time that the two leaders spent with each other was quite unprecedented.
Yeah.
So there was that investment. Now, it is not very clear to me why the Chinese felt that they could risk, in fact, reversing all the gains that they have that had been made. Because it's not only just a loss for India. I mean, to think that only India has lost from this and China has not, I do not think that is correct. Even China, for China, this is a setback. You know, going back to some kind of a normal relationship between the two countries is going to be a long haul. You know, unfortunate that this has happened, but I'm afraid we have a lot of work to do in the coming days.
Yeah, at so many levels. Thank you so much, Ambassador Saran, for being with us. It's wonderful hearing your views on this issue between India and China. Hopefully there will be peace on the ground, first of all, besides anything else. Need to take a short break at this stage. There's more coming up.